Welcome back. You're still watching Citi TV. And currently, we continue with our coverage of the transition as we make our way and prepare to receive our new president tomorrow, the 7th, also our new parliament, the 8th parliament of the 4th Republic of Ghana. So currently we're going to be crossing over to parliament where the parliamentary leadership, that's the majority and minority leaders of parliament, are addressing the nation.
Management Act provides for us appreciating the fiscal implications of every bill introduced in Parliament. We are not many at times, and I'm not talking only of 7th Parliament. I'm sure I'm here not as long as my colleague here, senior in Parliament, but at least you don't bring a loan and 24 hours you say that go and pass it. It means sometimes it may even require that we visit the site to appreciate environmental and social consequences of the action, to advance on the decision that we are going to take. That also becomes a problem. So I think generally, as we all heard from the president yesterday and we've heard from the majority leader, this parliament in terms of bills, he keeps the statistics. He will tell you that we'll pass more bills than any other parliament in the 4th Republic. But it's not just about passing the bills. How have those legislations contributed to improving the life of the Ghanaian, improving their quality of life, and how has it improved the delivery of public services? Let me conclude. For instance, when government needed to depend on parliament on COVID, we gave our cooperation. There were many of you who misconstrued even my action. But it was rooted in procedure and practice. When you want to suspend parliament, we know how parliament is suspended. It is not for anybody to reinvent a new rule or new order how it is done. The suspension provisions are provided for. You don't create an impression as if this is the first time parliament will be go on suspension. It has always gone on suspension. When it goes, what does the rule say? So it's not about a minority leader boycotting. What does the rule say? If somebody says that no, you are making new provision, what new provisions? And then I end with COVID. A global public health scourge and pandemic, it naturally have affected even the delivery of all public institutions. And for those of you in public affairs and IT, and even the media, we should be asking ourselves, how do we improve and how do we relate and perform in an atmosphere where COVID, God forbid, becomes a permanent public health problem for the world? What do we do? I don't see Ghana and its public service institutions being prepared to address matters relating to COVID. One of my greatest concern has been addressed now is the school children, those young lads, our children who are in basic schools, to sit home for 1 year. If they miss the foundation opportunity, forget it. The other day I said it, some people thought it was a joke. It's real. In Tamale, they are learning how to play catapult, you see catapult. Many of them in the morning, mothers are very concerned. What they do in the morning is just to walk in badges of 5 and 10, and then you see a catapult in their hand because there is no opportunity for schooling. That is why the decision to reopen schools, in my view, is important. But we still must behave as if COVID is with us, is real, and we need to protect those children, and particularly teachers and all those who have a role to play in our educational institutions. This is not the time to critique government policy, but my colleague knows that we are not happy the way they disburse COVID. I mean, you could not have 1 billion spending and yet people were still not in school. What were you doing with the money? Give teachers protection, give people protection. The money could do that, but that would be a conversation for the future. So going forward, I think that Ghana's parliament is only the better by the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Even though we are talking about 7th Parliament, I'm transiting to hand over to my colleague, so I should tease him. Those days that he used to bully me, Harun, we have the numbers. Now say we have the numbers. You don't have any numbers. 137, 137. Yesterday the president said almost equal. I corrected that statistical inaccuracy. 137, 137 is equal. It's not almost equal. And then he should appreciate that his independent candidate have not sworn an oath yet. So his declaration that he has added to him is legally untenable, especially when you drove him and humiliated him out of Parliament, who says that we are not also negotiating to have him on our side. So the 2020 elections, in my view, produce an inevitable outcome of no majority in Parliament, 137, 137. How does that serve the Ghanaian people? As I said yesterday, my own view is that the Ghanaian people are not happy with the polarization, the divisiveness, the excessive partisanship in the country. They want to see the opportunities of this country shared, and shared to every Ghanaian deserving of it, regardless of his political color. So once again, happy prosperous new year to you all. We look forward to the 8th Parliament. What I can assure my friend is that it's not going to be easy. I thought that he would have some stint somewhere to have some other ministerial experience. Once he has chosen to be in Parliament, you know, it will be my time to pay back. When I see that he has no numbers, I'll call for the vote on that note, Kate. When he has no numbers in the chamber. Those of you who understand mathematics, and that is why compromise and consensus building. I heard the president, since the election, he himself publicly said that they will reach out and cooperate. May I ask, what has he done since the election to reach out to the NDC and to reach out to Excellency John Mahama and the leadership of the NDC in the spirit of building this consensus and cooperation? I haven't seen any concrete steps being taken by the president, but it is important that he does that, because when he takes even 40% of ministers, the honorable chairmen will be lacking numbers on the floor and in the chamber. And I'll now let him appreciate what it means when you don't have numbers in the chamber. At every other time, quorum, then the 138 minimum decision to take a decision, I'll remind him. And the more important resolution of 2/3 members of Parliament will bring it to fore, will bring it to play. On that note, grateful for this opportunity to interact with you.
Thank you very much, the minority leader, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu. Round of applause for you, please. And so the majority leader will now take the microphone and also take stock of the 7th Parliament. Remember that this is all being posited in a hybrid system context. And so when it's time to ask questions, my ones are very much. So may I respectfully ask the majority leader to also take stock of the 7th Parliament and give his projections for the 8th.
Thank you very much, Madam Director of Program, for this morning. But distinguished officers here in assembled, let me begin by saying that I should remind the minority leader that per our rules, no member is allowed to issue threats to a colleague member of Parliament. It's against our rules, and you should know that. This proactive issuance of threats is unacceptable under our rules. But having said that, I think it's important also to avert our minds because I hear my colleagues on the other side say that there's no majority leader, there's no minority leader. The rules are clear. Let me read the rules. Who is the minority leader? the standing orders provide that the minority leader means a member of parliament, listen carefully, a member of parliament designated by the party having the largest numerical strength in parliament other than the party that has formed the government. Which party has formed the government?
We're in court.
I'm talking about the rules. Apply yourself to the rules. This is not about street demonstration. It's the rules that I'm reading to you.
And I say we're in court.
So you see, the rules are clear. Unless you don't want to apply yourself to the rules, that is the end of it. Having said so, I must commend him for his spirit of litigation. But there should be an end to litigation. That is in the letter vein. Let me also express my appreciation to the director for bringing us together in these matters. We have met here to really talk to ourselves about the achievements of the 7th Parliament, and indeed the members of the 7th Parliament. The functions of Parliament and indeed of parliamentarians are well set out. The first is the representational function of members of Parliament. How do we perform? Representing our constituents. The second is the deliberative functions of Parliament and indeed of parliamentarians. How did this 7th Parliament perform? Then we have the information dissemination functions of Parliament. Again, in assessing and evaluating the performance of the 7th Parliament, we should situate this in the context of the defined responsibilities of Parliament and indeed of members of Parliament. We also have, arguably, the greatest function of Parliament, which is legislation. How did we perform in our legislative responsibilities, our oversight responsibilities, carried out through the committee system? How has this Parliament performed? In terms of ratification of agreements and protocols and conventions, how did we perform? Petitions were submitted to us to help resolve outstanding matters in the country. The problem resolution function of Parliament, how did we perform? I think these are the yardstick to measuring the performance of Parliament and indeed of members of Parliament. We've broken the ice. The Speaker of Parliament has really brought to conclusion the effort started by the Right Honourable Peter Adajiti, who wanted to expand the space for Parliament by attending to the imperatives of Article 106 and Article 108 in respect of allowing for Parliament as an institution and also for individual members of Parliament to sponsor private bills and also private members' bills. Fortunately, in the dying embers of the 7th Parliament, we were able to do this. And I think this now paves the way for the next succeeding Parliament to expand the frontiers of what we just began at the dusk of the life of the 7th Parliament. To me, is a very significant and monumental matter that we took upon ourselves and were able to undertake. Distinguished officers of this House, as the minority leader alluded to, in terms of legislation as alluded to by the President yesterday, this Parliament, the 7th Parliament, has been the busiest. It's been the busiest because in terms of sheer numbers, we were able to pass over 230 bills came before us, out of which we were able to transact business and indeed pass about 296 of the bills that came before us. No parliament has crossed the barrier of 100 bills. Never. This parliament has been able to do this. The average for the parliaments between 70 and 80, over 4 years, this parliament was able to do this. And we're able to do that, thankfully, because of the processes and procedures and the structures that we put in place. I must express my eternal gratitude to the likes of the Honorable Ben Abdallah, the Chairman of Legal Constitutional Affairs, the Honorable Inusa Husseini, the Honorable Yile Chire, and the Honorable Shaibu. Unfortunately, all these are not going to be part of us. And I don't know where the next parliament is really going to find itself. We were able to send them outside. They learned so much and they positively impacted on legislation. It's the reason why we're able to speed legislation through Parliament. Because when we have referred these pieces of bills to the various sector committees and they have come back with their own amendments, we then sat down with this winnowing committee in my office. And regardless of the bulk of the bill, we go through and bills that have come to this house which we have not been able to deal with, including in particular the Companies Code, which has been in existence in this country for close to 65 years. And every parliament attempted to amend or indeed to have a new act in place. This parliament, this second parliament, is the only one that was able to turn it around. Following from there, we then had the corporate insolvency bill, which is a necessary sequel to the company, the passage of the company's bill. The land bill, I mean, many watershed bills that we have passed. As I'm saying, gratitude should go to these colleagues who assisted us in this exercise. Unfortunately, they are no longer going to be with us. I shudder to think how Parliament is going to confront the bills that will be coming to Parliament. Distinguished members and officers of this House, to recap, we've had to pass, really relate to the land bill or the Chartered Institute of Human Resource Management, Education Regulatory Bodies, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, the registration of births and deaths. Again, another watershed act that we passed. The Ghana Communication Technology University Bill, University of Skills and Training, Entrepreneurial Development, with the House amended to read the Akentena University of Skills Training, Entrepreneurial Development, Development Finance Institutions Bill, Security and Intelligence Agencies, Communications Service Act, the Corporate Insolvency Act, already related to complementary education, Real Estate Agency, Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation Bill, Iron and Steel, the Integrated Bauxite and Aluminium Bill, Insurance, the Public-Private Partnership Bill, Borrowers and Lenders. These are going to be foundational acts into the next Parliament, given where as a country we are as a middle-income country, and sourcing for development funds is going to be very difficult for us. The bilateral agreements that we used to have with countries would no longer be the thing in vogue now. On account of the strength of the country, we should be able to borrow. And a lot then will depend on how we get it right in these matters relating to the Public-Private Partnership Bill. The cyber security bill that will be there, the vigilantism as the minority that are related to the narcotics control, the Office of Special Prosecutor, Minerals Income Investment Fund, These are watershed bills that we have crafted. Now I want to believe that going forward, this parliament, the leadership of this parliament, should be appealing to the various political parties to do serious introspection into the various parties' constitution to prevent this constant peeling of experienced members of parliament. It's not helping the cause of parliament at all. And I want to believe that in this, we are going to be together. Let me also say that I often make this appeal to you, the journalists, the media persons who cover events in this house. We're beginning a new parliament. You have been covering activities in the house. You have been covering committee meetings, committee sittings. Elsewhere, the journalists also do specialization, such that after 4 years, after 8 years, when we talk on matters, you should be talking on matters from positions of authority. Unfortunately, I must confess, like some members of parliament who after 2-3 terms only walk through parliament and don't allow parliament to walk through them. There are many of you here who, after spending so much time in the house, also don't allow parliament to walk through you. It's the reason why when on many occasions we are spoken to matters on the floor of the house, some of you are not able to get it right. So when we leave the chamber, you are meeting us in the corridors. Now, but you should be getting it right. Because after the president has spoken, you don't meet the president in the corridors, you ask the president, what did you mean? So if you are able to get it right there, why can't you get it right in the chamber when the minority leader has spoken, when the majority leader has spoken? I will urge you strongly. You can't cover every blade of grass in the chamber. If you want to be an effective member of parliament, you also must be specializing. In the same breath, you as media persons should also be specializing. First of all, you must be reporting on general matters to your various media houses. So you're expected to be general practitioners, so to speak. However, beyond that, you'll be specializing on matters that you are familiar with, such that you'll be able to talk on authority. If a member of parliament talks to something and he gets it wrong, you should be able to tell the person that, no, from experience, this is what has happened in the chamber. You remember Watergate? What happened? That effort was led by a journalist who had specialized in the processes and procedures of that parliament. He led the entire nation on the path of righteousness. Let us do the same thing here. So I urge you to let us be together. By and large, you've done tremendously well. A few times that there have been a few infractions when some journalists, influenced by their own fixations, have misreported. But that is only human nature, right? I'll tell you, now I keep urging. Now you take a journal like, but this is The Economist. You read The Economist. It represents a political philosophy. If you take the Newsweek, right? If you take the other one, Time magazine, the two of them represent one side or the other of the political spectrum in the US. Read any of them. You are not able to discern which side of the political spectrum they represent, because they strive to be very objective. It's only when you read carefully and you apply a very discerning eye that you're able to see which side they are advocating for. But you take your usual newspaper in Ghana, the first sentence betrays the intention of that press house. It's not good enough. And there are many journals, there are many newspapers that I don't read. The I don't want to increase my blood pressure. Because you know from the very outset what is intended to be said by them. And they are so scandalous, so acerbic, so acidic in their language. I will not read them. You can't critique policies without being visceral in your language, without setting out to destroy. So I'll plead with all of us into the next dispensation. The minority leader knows, I believe, on introspection, that under the leadership of a certain Osechi Mensah-Bonsu, we've endeavored to be very consultative. But I know there's ample room for improvement. And especially given the fact that the numbers are almost at parity levels. We have to deepen democracy. In 2013, when we took our matter to the Supreme Court, we had smaller numbers in Parliament, 122, as against, at the time, 149 for the NDC. And yet, we thought that we could win. If we had won, the minority leader was going to be the leader of government business, right? And we thought we still could have governed this country. What it meant was that if we had won the court case and Akufo-Addo had been sworn in as the president, it would have been necessary, more than necessary, for him to reach out, to be very consultative in every step that he takes. That is deepening our democratic governance. The issue or the state when a ruling party has a very sizable majority and therefore takes for granted the other side is not good for our democracy. And I think that where we are now, we have to be reaching out to one another. As I said, I've been doing this since I became the minority leader. I can tell you, between me and my God, that maybe over 1 year, you don't have the majority that even call you to discuss anything. We all will meet at the speaker's conference room in the lead up to the sitting. I was distressed. But we are making progress. And as I'm saying, where we are now, we are compelled to expand the frontiers of consultation. Democracy is not a winner-takes-all matter. And for me, this should set a new standard for improving Ghana's democratic governance and indeed the operations of our own parliament. God be with us, and let's be together with the intention and indeed the credo that we are one people in one country with one destiny. And that's in everything that we do, we should be informed about the unity and stability of this country. God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Round of applause, Leader 1, please. May I acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin and the Honorable Comfort Dulu. They are here with us. Leader, with your permission, with your both leaders' permission, we will open the floor. We will have to, brevity, it should be the name of the game. If you have any questions, comments, please make it snappy. And once we're done, we can engage the board members in specific interviews. But for this purpose, we will be rounding up as soon as possible. And so, Duke, Pesese, and we'll take Duke, Pesese, Gato, Kweku, and you. We're taking you in that order. Fire, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Brent. I work with Citi Newsroom. First of all, I want to find out from Leader between now and tomorrow morning, there are a few important points, a few important things that will be happening in the House. So the dissolution of the 7th Parliament, the inauguration of the 8th Parliament, the election of new speaker and deputy, some other things. structure and schedule that you have, when should we expect these things
First of all,
to happen?
the chronology of it.
Yes, the dissolution of the 7th Parliament, the inauguration of the 8th Parliament, and then the election of the speakers, working from now towards tomorrow.
Give me your constitution.
When do we expect these things to happen in terms of timelines and what you have programmed? And then secondly, over the past 24 to 48 hours, the usual 4-year discussion, uproar, public interest matters with regards to gratuities and end of service benefits for members of parliament is up once again. We are told that members of parliament, your colleagues, added them, minority, majority, want certain adjustments to be done to what has been approved by the executive. And before you approve what is due the executive, and they approve, you also approve, yes. What is the clarity on this matter? And are there any demands that members of parliament are putting on the table in that regard? Thank you. I have other questions, but I think for one to time.
Madam Director, it should be one man, one machete, one woman, one basket.
So brevity again, and the head of table office is here, so we can also, if you have anything that is that in terms of the
My name is Christian Persson. I identify with natural resource news. To both leaders, one issue that has characterized almost all parliaments is about the late introduction of bills and financial agreements. This has not helped in the past. The recent example is the Japan royalties deal. That is likely, or that will resurface in the 8th Parliament. Leaders, what should we do going forward, or what are you going to do going forward to ensure that government desists from introducing important items late into the House to curtail some of the things, like what we saw with the Japan deal? And to the minority leader specifically, will you be working with government? Will you recognize, will you support government business? Because when in 2013, then people went to court, their side did not initially support government activities in the House, especially the vetting of ministers. Is your side considering doing so? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Riku Secretary. I report for GhanaMPs.com. Majority Leader, Minority Leader. I just want to find out, moving into the 8th Parliament, what is the game plan to really get enough members on the floor when it comes to law crafting? Thank you.
Yeah, we take that away.
This Parliament, the 7th Parliament, was hit by a number of scandals, if you call them so, from the bribery allegation to
Name.
Opoku Gakpo. I was the joinees. Just Opoku Gakpo. This Parliament was hit by a number of scandals in the course of its lifespan, from the bribery allegation by Mr. Yarega to the visa fraud scandal allegation, presumably involving some MPs as alleged by the UK High Commission, to the situation where a colleague was found guilty of contempt in the House for describing the leader as chief. The question is, to what extent do you think some of these incidents dented the image of Parliament in the 7th Parliament generally? And do you think, as a House, in terms of enforcing discipline and ensuring that MPs abided by their own code of conduct, that was done as suspected? Thank you.
Which answer?
We attempt to answer a few of your questions. Transition to the 7th Parliament naturally was dissolved by a question of time. There is no legal process. It's just a question of time legally, that when time lapses at 12 midnight, the 7th Parliament would naturally have been resolved. So by the end of today's proceedings, those members of Parliament who are not able to make it to the 8th Parliament will necessarily have a terminal keys to their mandate and term as members of Parliament. And from that fine hour, when new members of Parliament subscribe to the oath of office as required by them by the attachment in the 1992 Constitution, oath of allegiance, oath of secrecy, oath of member of Parliament. But note that Article 95(3) provides that no business shall be transacted in Parliament other than an election to the office of Speaker at any time when the office of Speaker is vacant. So Article 95 imposes an obligation that when we do start, we are not able to transact any business until a determination is made of the Speaker. We will go through that lawful process. It says a person who qualifies to be member of Parliament qualifies to be Speaker of Parliament. So 95(1), there shall be a Speaker of Parliament who shall be elected by the members of Parliament from among persons who are members of Parliament who are qualified to be members of Parliament. So any elected MP has the power today to nominate any candidate of his choice who satisfies the minimum requirement under Article 95. And any Ghanaian person desirous of wanting to be can reach out to any person for our purposes. But knowing what those numbers can do of political party representation, in many instances it's been reached by consensus. I'm not too sure what will happen tomorrow, but we are bracing up for what will happen tomorrow. But we will determine who the Speaker will be and the 2 deputy speakers. Now, questions on gratuity and ex gratia, legitimate and lawful, under Article 71. Members of Parliament are required to, if you want, I'll read Article 71 well for you. So, gratuity and ex gratia, one of the phones here is picking a signal of a call, so that's it. So, Article 71, the salaries and allowance payable and the facility and privilege available to Speaker, members of Parliament, Chief Justice, Auditor General, Electoral Commission are all provided for. So when you see gratuity being discussed, and it's important that the public appreciates that our job, there's no security of tenure. When you're in public service, they say you retire at 60. This person has come in at the end of the 4 years. He has to be entitled to it. What we need to do is to carry the public along. There are many of you who comment as if MPs are not deserving of it. In 2016, there was no salary adjustment for MPs. 2017, no adjustment. 2018, no adjustment. 2019, no adjustment. Yet, every public servant, like MPs, got some salary adjustment 2017, about 12.5%, 10%, 12%, and 10%. So all that is being now worked out. So it is not just gratuity, but salary arrears will be paid to deserving members of Parliament who have served their 4-year term. I believe, and I stand by it, that the salaries and allowances of members of Parliament be equated to that of appeals court judges. That is my view, that is my notion, and I think strongly that we will work towards that. Now, for the media again, there's good news for you. Myself and the leader, we all support your capacity building, and we are encouraging that when the Speaker of Parliament is traveling abroad on international obligations in pursuit of parliamentary diplomacy, 1 or 2 of your colleagues must be able to join to report on the 3rd gentleman of our republic. and what Parliament does, so that you appreciate whether it's Inter-Parliamentary Union or the Commonwealth Parliamentary Union or other associated visit. You should be blaming COVID for 2020 and not the Speaker or the leadership of Parliament. So to conclude, I accordingly will advise President Nana Addo Dankwa to go beyond the rhetoric of wanting to reach out and looking for consensus and compromises by taking concrete steps to reach out for the peace, unity, and stability of our country. And that manifestation as reflected in the inevitable outcome of the 2020 election. Now, reminding me of your question, what was it about?
Do you recognize President Addo? Do you support government leaders in the House?
Every elected MP swears an oath, and the oath defines what commitments I make to the Republic. So don't personalize it. We are serving the people of Ghana, nothing more, and we have a duty to serve the people of Ghana. Disagreements we have, I just reminded my colleague when he was reading standing orders, he can read majority and majority 2 for you in the standing orders. We are in court. We are questioning the legitimacy of the outcome of the election, and we are calling for some decision at what we describe as a travesty of electoral justice. Thank you. Leader. Okay, I'll correct myself. Electoral injustice. Travesty of electoral injustice. Thank you.
Well, as the Minority Leader has alluded to, the issue of the dissolution of Parliament, it is automatic, and Article 113 of the Constitution provides in summary, subject to Clause 2 of this article, and Clause 2 really relates to whether we may have a war situation or whatever. Subject to that, Parliament shall continue for 4 years from the date of its first sitting and shall then stand dissolved. So Parliament is inaugurated on the 7th, midnight 6th. There's that automaticity about that. It stands dissolved on its own. And it doesn't have to rely on any processes and procedures to wind up. So that's the position of the Constitution. Then the swearing in of the Speaker, as again alluded to by the Minority Leader. Article 95(3) of the Constitution is clear that no business shall be transacted in Parliament other than an election to the office of Speaker at any time when the office of Speaker is vacant. What is going to happen is, I don't know whether you follow the processes, the very first time that Parliament sits to transact that business, there's nobody in the chair. And the person who presides as the chairman is a clerk to Parliament. So the clerk to Parliament, it is who would chair the function until a speaker is elected. Once the speaker is elected, he's sworn in by the Chief Justice, and then the members of Parliament elect who would have elected the speaker. It's really a chicken and egg situation, because the members of Parliament elected have not been sworn in yet. In what capacity would they be electing the speaker? But that is the language of the Constitution. The members of Parliament elect the speaker. The speaker is sworn in by the Chief Justice, and after he's been sworn in by the Chief Justice, then he swears in the members of Parliament. And when members of Parliament have been sworn in, then from among themselves they will elect the deputy speakers, because deputy speakers should be elected from among members of parliament. At that time, not members of parliament elect. So that is the procedure. Now, you also raised issue about the gratuity. The minority leader again has related to it when he spoke to Article 71. But with respect, you should also look at Article 114 of the Constitution, because people oftentimes raise this issue, they don't deserve it, they shouldn't be paying anything. What work do they do? Article 114, in the considered opinion of the framers of our Constitution, they provided in Article 114(1) that a person who has served as a member of Parliament for a period of no less than 4 years shall be eligible, ceasing to be a member of Parliament on his death, for the payment of such gratuity to him or his personal representative, as the case may be, as shall be determined by the President acting in consultation the committee referred to in Article 71 of this Constitution. So the payment of gratuity to members of Parliament is constitutional. So for those of them who are saying that they don't deserve it, can you please refer them to Article 114(1)? They postpay to it. Then the Gapo, he says scandals. I don't know what you mean by scandals. Every parliament since this Fourth Republic has had its own share of issues that involve members or even the House. So it is not peculiar to this House. You relate to issues of bribery. That one was investigated by a committee of the House. And as far as the record of the House is concerned, it was never established that any member of Parliament had been paid any bribe. So 4 years on, when you come to refer to bribery allegations paid to in respect of members, I shudder to think of the motive underpinning the question. Because it is established that no such thing happened. And when we keep referring to it, that there was a bribery allegation, would have been settled. Why do we go back to refer to it as a bribery allegation? So I don't want to believe that it's underpinned by other ulterior motives. I think we are not capable of any ulterior motives. Then the discipline of members of Parliament is something that we should be working on. That is, you refer in particular to attendance at meetings of the House. See, the function of a member of Parliament is not confined to plenary business alone, committee work, and so on and so forth. It's the reason why we were thinking of looking at the sitting periods of the House. Elsewhere, you have Parliament sit maybe after 1, often maybe 2 o'clock. In the mornings, the committees will be working. We've been appealing to committees not to work concurrent to plenary business. But it becomes difficult to enforce this. So perhaps the time has come for us as a House to look at the sitting periods of the time. Some of us, including I myself, and indeed you, the media houses, when we said, after 1 we are all moving out to file your stories. Is that not the case? So if Parliament should be sitting at 2, how are you going to really position yourself in your own reportage? That's the difficulty. But should Parliament's business also be entirely dependent on the reportage of media persons? That's also another matter that we should be thinking through. But if we want Parliament to be effective, perhaps we may have to be looking at rescheduling our sitting times from 10 o'clock, that oftentimes we are not able to comply with anyway, to perhaps a more realistic time, which perhaps may be 2 o'clock. But it's something that we have to think through. Of course, we also have to be mindful of your own reporting periods. The other one, the late introduction of bills in the House. All parliaments have been so afflicted. Most unfortunately, I'm not justifying that. I think, as the minority leader alluded to, sometimes it does appear that bills are rushed through Parliament and so on. I have always insisted that if we opened the space to the committees, we would have, because before a bill is introduced in the House, in plenary, there's been some consultation behind the curtains before it comes to the House. It is the committees that should be assisted to really do a much more diligent work on referrals that are made to them. Every year, in crafting the budget of Parliament, we set aside some amount for the various committees to tap into, to engage consultants, to advise them on referrals that are made. There's not been a single occasion ever since we began this. That's over the past about 8 years or so, that any committee has come with a proposal to tap into it to engage consultants. And every year the money returns to chest. Is it the case that the committees are not being diligent themselves? So I agree that, yes, we should not be saddled with this responsibility of having this last hour invasion of the House, bills and so on. But the committees themselves also need to up their game. If you can consider it, so advise plenary that we can't attend to it. But it comes, and they say that, well, we have looked at it, we believe we can do justice to it. Sometimes leadership doesn't so much agree. I mean, the committee comes to tell you that we can do business. Who are you in leadership to tell them that, well, I don't think we can do business, when they tell you that we can do business? That's a difficulty. But I agree entirely that we should slow down the conduct of business. It's not for nothing that some jurisdictions have second chambers. The purpose of the chamber, the second chamber, is to tally bills and other referrals to the lower houses. Sometimes it appears a waste of time, but where we have a unitary and a single chamber, I believe that maybe we have to look at these things and further resource the committee systems in order for them to be much more diligent work on referrals that go to them. What's the other one that the minority leader related to? The travels to be accompanied. I think it's something that some of us have been advocating all this while. But if, of course, when we will not be picking and choosing, if it comes to that, we leave it to the leadership of your own association, and of course with some input from the Public Affairs Department
to rotate it.
But if we should, yeah, of course, I'm saying that it should. I don't want to define the rules of engagement for them. They themselves are mature enough to apply whatever rules to themselves. But as happens here, if we travel to IPU, Geneva, presentations are made, and then after the event, you come and ask me, leader, it means this time around. It means this time around. You don't travel anywhere. You will travel somewhere else, perhaps it will be to Burkina Faso. Not anywhere else outside, really, the shores of this country. Please, so let's take ourselves seriously, the journalists, and let's learn as fast and as much as we ourselves can to justify our inclusion in the House. I see quite a number of you who are climbing up. But it's still important to also make the observation that there's vast room for improvement in the performance of many of you, the performance of many of you. That is not to run down on anybody. Please, as I said, if you ask me, if I flash back and look at the days of the Richard Skies when they were in the chamber, then I see a bit of a climb down. But I believe you're capable of improving your own standards. If it's important for us as a house to assist you in building your own capacities in various ways, please let us know. Whatever assistance that as a house we can provide to you, just like the house is eager to assist in building the capacities of members of parliament. Right? I think we can move in this direction together. Madam Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leader. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Joseph Daha, Honorable the Deputy Minister for Defense. We have the Marshal to Parliament, Honorable Drew, for some reason, and we have the Marshal to Parliament here. I also see the Deputy Director for Legal also here. And of course, the Deputy Director for Public Affairs has been instrumental in all this. And to all the people that I'm not seeing, because I'm short-sighted, who must be acknowledged, I truly acknowledge you. And I'd like to thank you for coming. This is not the end. The conversation is going to continue. Like I told you, the Honorable Afinumakin, the Honorable Doyu, Jetro, and everybody's here. So if you have further questions, they are ready to engage you. Thank you very much for coming. And I would like to ask the Honorable Doyu to give us closing prayer. Very brief.
Let's pray.
So I'll try and get something on the jelly thing.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning for this wonderful meeting. We started with you and we have ended it with you. We ask you to guide us throughout the day so that anything we will do should be very, very successful in your name. We pray that you guide the Speaker, the House, and everybody through this transition and tonight and tomorrow. We thank you for the glory. Amen.
So we'll wait and let the leadership leave first, then we'll follow. Should they like to engage you on this? Right now.
Right now?
All right, so there you have it. The transition continues, and so you saw the leaders of the House and Parliament giving their take on the 7th Parliament and so on. And I thought, for me, it was very. I like the tone.
Yes.
The general tone is very encouraging.
Yeah, and there's lots of camaraderie.
Yes.
You know, the two, you have the minority leader, majority leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, Honorable Osei and Sobonsu, lots of ribbing each other.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing we want to see, you know, that we've worked together, we've had our ups and downs, we've had our challenges, the people of Ghana have spoken, and we are ready to move forward together for Ghana. And I mean, for me, I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that.
So,
of course, what Haruna Idrisi was saying about the fact that the president shouldn't say there's almost no majority. No, they said there isn't a majority. We are equal, right? And reminded him that the independent candidate has not sworn an oath.
No, he has not.
So it's going to be a matter of negotiation.
Yes, and also raise a very important point about the fact that, remember, that our Constitution states that the president must have a majority of his ministers coming from Parliament. And we've had conversations over the years, especially throughout the Fourth Republic, about whether or not that's something we should be considering to change in our to amend in our Constitution, because the ministerial position, don't get it twisted, it's something heavy.
It is very heavy.
The portfolios come with tasks, and of course we as the people, as journalists, we will hold the ministers accountable.
We demand a lot.
But at the same time, the people who voted for you in your constituency will also be expecting you to do what you promised while you represent them in Parliament. So I mean, Honorable Haruna Idrisi raised a good point that, look, remember, a lot of your ministers had to come from Parliament, and if for some reason they cannot be in the House when we are sitting, the majority will by all means be at the time will speak.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the president did make a statement right at the beginning when I think it was in his initial speech.
Yes, his acceptance speech.
After the elections, and he was saying that there'll be a lot of collaboration, in Parliament, and I think that was a good note he set, But then I think it's also important for us to look at the Constitution again and address the issues. So for me, I see two things. I see the one that we just talked about, which is the ministers coming from Parliament.
Right.
I think it's important at this point for us to look at the need to have serious technocrat strength, in Parliament. And then let's try and also move away from. I believe that if the people, the people who, the electorate, who are voting, if they realize that, look, we are voting for MMDCEs, right, and they are the people that are actually implementing the change.
The development change,
agents, right? If they are the ones implementing the change and they are not working, we can get rid of them anytime we want. They will be less likely to vote out an MP when they have someone else who they can vent their spleen on.
Because of course a lot of the frustration is directed towards the MP. I mean, partly because the MPs are also going into the constituencies and making all sorts of
but they can make those promises. They can make those promises because the agents, the change makers and the change agents are not being voted for.
Right.
So they are not going about trying to garner exactly people's votes and so on.
So you would like to see a time where we're voting for our MMDCs,
I think
our mayors and all that.
I was disappointed when the whole thing fell into water, at the beginning of the administration.
I mean, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to get there, to vote for the MMDCs and let them take the flak. If they are not living up to, because they're doing the work anyway, right? Or not doing the work, So whichever it is, the populace should be able to vent their spleen at them directly, as opposed to targeting the MPs who are, representatives in Parliament, but representatives, in the Legislative Assembly, not necessarily to come and implement change on the ground in the community.
Another thing that. And particularly Honorable Asay Mensah Bonsu spoke about extensively. He is encouraging journalists to learn and understand the issues that affect us as Ghanaians, and even go as far as specializing. So if you're becoming, and like here at Citi, we have a parliamentary correspondent in Duke Mensah Opoku. In the past, we've had Richard Della Sky, encouraging our journalists to specialize and really understand things so that they can also do their bit as the fourth arm, or we can do our bit as the fourth arm of government and hold, brief or hold the government accountable where we have to. And I thought that was very interesting, and I believe he's right. We, as the media, we set the tone for a lot of the conversations that happen. It's either like we just did, broadcasting live coverage of things that are happening, things that are being said by our leaders, by our government officials, or we are analyzing the things that they've said or the things that they've done. And whether it's direct reportage or analysis, through what we do, we are inadvertently influencing what the citizenry thinks, what they believe, and also influencing the level of understanding of what is going on or the temperature of the country. So I thought that was very interesting that he should mention that, but I think it's a valid point as well.
No, I mean, if you look at what the media has contributed in the last 20-something years, you know, to our, I mean, since 1995, we've had the private media space.
Right.
You know, we've been in this space, and it's remarkable to see that today, if anybody wants to report a major issue, they don't go to the duty bearers directly.
No, not to the police. I mean, we have people sending us messages all the time. There's a fire across the street from my office.
They will tell the media house first.
Yes, can you prompt the fire service? Or there's an accident on the motorway. Can you prompt the police? We even have in situations people sending us messages that they don't have jobs and they want to commit suicide. Can you help us?
True.
You know, and so the media has become very powerful, and I think we've done well, but we also have to start taking our role a little more seriously, taking ourselves a little more seriously. I think it's a very valid point. If we're going to critique, we were talking about the 7th Parliament that will be dissolved later tonight, 12 midnight. You know, today is the 6th. But also, it's not just about Parliament, it's not just about Cabinet, that, of course, from tomorrow we'll have President-elect being sworn in. It's the same human being, but it's a different presidency. You know, of course, we've lost a lot of the MPs who have lost their seats on the MPP side were ministers. So we are not going to be seeing a lot of the same faces in Cabinet and in the ministerial corps as a whole. But if we're critiquing all these things, then we also need to critique the role that we played as media as well, I believe.
But I find it interesting. So if many of the ministers are going to come from within Parliament, then, and many of the parliamentarians are gone, you know, it's going to be interesting.
Very interesting. Who takes what?
Yeah, exactly. What the face of the new government is going to actually look like.
I think it would be very, very interesting to see that. You know, and then also how I would be interested to see how the president, again, taps into the space of the technocrats. Yeah. You know, and how he would spin that to his advantage or otherwise. You know, it should be very interesting. But something that Haruna Idrisu mentioned, I mean, almost from the very beginning of his address, he spoke about how difficult a decision it was for them to arrive at this decision of letting students go back to school. You know, and he mentioned that in some communities, children are learning how to do slingshots and stuff like that. And it's true. In all our conversations about COVID and the economy and yada, 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 for the most part, there are lots of things we haven't spoken about when it comes to our kids in terms of their development, of course, their educational development, their social development. We've spoken a little bit about the economics of it. We've had our teachers crying out, particularly private teachers in private schools who have not received any kind of payments unless some parents, I know that the school my children might go to, for example, and then many others, parents have come together, the PTA has said, let's contribute so we can give this to teachers just to keep them going along. Some of us have even gone as far as engaging teachers who live within our vicinity so that they can support with lessons at home and whatnot. But for the most part, teachers have been left high and dry. We've spoken about those things. We've spoken about the fact that parents, and particularly parents who were not necessarily working from home, have lost their livelihood because they have to now become caregivers at home. In other instances, people who have even been able to afford nannies or some sort of support for their kids at home, because they're afraid of the virus. You don't want somebody going and coming and you don't know where they're coming from and what they're bringing in. So again, you've had to let those people go and take up more responsibility at home. But the kids themselves, we've not really heard from them. And having taught before, I can tell you, yesterday there was a conversation on the breakfast show on radio, Citi Breakfast Show, where the conversations about concerns that some teachers feel that the kids would have forgotten everything by the time they go back to school. And to some extent, it's true. It's just like practicing something. Yeah. Even when you're not well and you don't drive for some time, or you've been on leave and you come. Yes. That spark is not there. And I can imagine how our kids are going to have to struggle to catch up. Yeah. And for the younger ones, look, we underestimate the power of education of our kids who are 5 and below. When we say those are their formative years, it is not a joke. If they're going to speak well, if they're going to be critical thinkers, if they're going to be people who question things and they don't just take things hook, line, and sinker, if they're going to be confident or timid, those things are determined usually 5 and below. Yeah. And I'm very worried because it's not every child who has a parent who has the time or presence of mind or even the know-how. There are lots of people who haven't been to school, but they are doing their best to give their kids a chance at an education, a better life, thereafter. And if you don't have a parent or some means to pull the kids along, I worry about that age group, and it's something we're not really talking about. Well, we're going to be embedded in Parliament throughout the period till the new Parliament and the new President are sworn in. And so don't go anywhere. Stay with Citi TV. Keep watching Citi TV. At any point in time when there's something important that's happening in Parliament that we can bring to you, we will come back to bring that to you right here on Citi TV. So keep watching. The transition continues. Yes, it does. And like Apiko said earlier on, this current Parliament, the 7th Parliament, will be dissolved later tonight. By midnight, it will not exist anymore. A minute past midnight, 12:01 a.m. The members of Parliament are going to go back into the chamber and the proceedings will continue. So they select a speaker, a new Speaker of Parliament, and then a deputy. Usually we have a first deputy and a second deputy speaker. So let's say by 12:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm sure by that time we'll know who already know who the new Speaker of Parliament and his deputies will be. So well, stay with us and keep watching Citi TV. My name is David Kwekusechi. And my name is Apioko.